a simple dot for the pupil, a simple dot for the highlight, and I love this. It looks like a mountain, actually, when you think about it. Alright guys, welcome back for a second episode of Style Man A, and today we're going to be trying to learn a bit more about new eye styles, and this time it's from the anime Yuru Camp, which is also known as, I believe, Laid Back Camp in the West. I've never drawn these eyes before. I'm going through and just drawing as many characters as possible, learning more about various different styles that I can put into my own characters. I'm going to create Style Woman A. The main thing I already can tell from these eyes is that compared to a lot of other anime, they are really, really droopy. And I think the word in Japanese is tare. And usually you can make any eyes kind of droop like this when the situation requires it. But the thing about the design of these eyes in Yuru Camp is that they're like permanently droopy. These characters are just always laid back and relaxed. You know, this is a normal eye, but an eye that's droopy is one that's like going downward as it goes to the outer edge of the eye. And what they call tsurime, which is the opposite, would be angled upward as it goes to the outer edge of the eye. And these eyes, you tend to see these really frequently on characters that are constantly kind of angry, or not angry, but, you know, tsundere characters. They can't help themselves but be angry even though they want people to like them. So let's jump straight in. First, let's get a base head for our character. This is going to be Style Woman A. I'm going to change the color of the base face to blue just so it's easier to see. And like I said earlier, the main thing about these eyes is that they go up and then they come down. And unlike a lot of anime eyes from the 90s where you had it flick up for the eyelashes going off to the edge of the eye, instead of going up like this and then down here for the base of the eye, we're not going to have this part for these Yuru Camp eyes. They go up, they come down, and they just kind of stop. And in fact, this is really common in a lot of anime these days, is you don't have the line here at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the pupils first. And the pupils for Yuru Camp eyes, they look like angular eggs. They're like a rounded diamond shape, maybe? Now, this is the first draft. I'll probably clean this up and make it better after this. But for a general shape, we're looking at a rounded diamond with a flat-ish base at the bottom. But again, we'll probably erase bits of this line here so that it's a little lighter in feel. And then for a color illustration, what you'd have is the skin color, and the whites of the eyes would actually kind of have a border around here. So I'm going to draw a line in here, but the truth is you wouldn't actually have a line art colored line for this part. So instead, let's just jump straight into it. Instead of having the line completely done at the base, have it kind of dotted here, so it kind of alludes to the shape of the eye, but doesn't actually completely outline it. And then even though we don't have the base of the eye, we are going to have some of the eyelashes. So it looks like for the Yuru Camp eyes, they kind of put a couple lines in for the base eyelashes here, and then, you know, you'd still have a couple on the bottom over there as well. So let's refine the actual shape of the eye using the eyelashes here. Now, in fact, the actual shape of eyes in Yuru Camp seems to be even more pronounced than I was making it at the start. But it goes up and then it comes down quite dramatically. The inner eyelash, however, does go up and down. So there's the eyelash facing down and the eyelash kind of floating up like this. So the inner parts of the eyelash seem to be quite similar to a lot of other anime. So the middle part of the upper eyelash is the thickest part, and then it just gradually gets thinner and thinner as you get to the edge. Now, when the eyes are open, you often see this in other anime designs as well. You see the fold of the eyelid, and sometimes you just see a couple lines for the fold, and it's kind of softer in the middle. But it looks like for Yuru Camp, they actually draw one thin pencil line, and this line will actually meet the upper eyelash at the base. Now, each of the characters have different eyebrows, and I'm not going to focus too much on them, but for Nadeshiko, who is one of the main characters, her eyelashes are often just 2 lines like this or 3 lines like that. But again, focusing mostly on the eye today. And if we want to get really specific about this eyelash, this design is actually not a completely simple meeting of 2 lines at the end. It actually goes out like this, comes in again, and then this line kind of goes past it, like that. What you often find on 90s anime eyes is you'd have 1, 2 lines like this for the eyelashes, one pointing up and one pointing down, and then when it comes down on the other side for the outer edge of the eye, this is the outer edge here, but you'd have like one flicking up and then another one flicking down like this. And on Yuru Camp, instead, they just both aim downward. One of them is just pure line art and the other one is the thinning of the upper eyelash. Man, I love discovering details like this. Alright, I've cleaned up the eye a little bit, and a couple things that I did notice that I had to change. The proportions here, I feel like this part was too big, so I made this part a little bit smaller and the upper part of the eyelash a little bit longer by comparison. The Yuru Camp style from the anime seems to have very, very thin lines, to the point that obviously these lines here at the base are practically disappearing. In fact, you can already see I've forgotten to add a couple of these eyelashes here at the base. So that is the first part of the eye, and the next thing we need to do is go into the pupils. Now, compared to some anime, these eyes are actually quite simple. The pupils are going to go right in the center, and they're also elongated, a lot like these eyes when they're wide open. The pupils are kind of like rounded diamonds, a bit like the overall iris itself. And according to the anime version, everything is completely filled in black. Now this is where it actually gets quite fun. Some of the characters, and for certain scenes, you'll see that the shading goes straight over the top of the eye like this. But for all the characters except for Rin, it looks like most of the time when you're at a sort of average distance away from the characters, the upper shadow, so the shadow that's like cast by the shape of the eye on the iris itself, that actually mimics the shape of the eye and comes like this. So it's kind of like a Star Trek insignia for the shading on the top of the eye. And what's interesting about the show is that all the characters except for Rin tend to have this style of shading most of the time. But Rin, for some reason, her eyes tend to be using this version of the shading. And I think the idea is that Rin is the most laid back of all of them and the one who likes to be left alone the most. And by having this line across the middle, it definitely makes her feel a little more relaxed and droopy. Cool little detail I didn't notice while just watching the show. So it's really fun to do these style mimic challenges just to learn more about something so you can appreciate it even more the next time you watch it. So in addition to this block shading here at the top of the eye, we also have some slightly airbrush looking shading over the top. I'm going to clip to the blue color here. It looks like it just goes generally straight over the top half of the iris, getting ever so slightly darker at the top and kind of curling around to the sides, but not too much. And in fact, for the irises, that is almost completely finished. All we need to do is add a highlight now. So it looks like this highlight is going to be roughly the same size as the pupil, overlapping the iris and slightly going out into the whites of the eyes as well. And last but not least, we're going to add the color of the eyelashes. A couple of the characters have colored eyelashes, and a few of them have darker black eyelashes. I'm going to go for these dark brownish eyelashes. Alright, and that is more or less the style of eye that you get for Nadeshiko in Yuru Camp. But of course, here using the style and amending it for Style Woman A. And just to give a preview of what it would look like with the whites of the eyes actually visible, let's add some skin color, shall we? So hopefully by adding the skin color here, you can see a little more closely how the whites of the eyes still show their shape, even though you're not using line art to do it. And one thing about this design that I quite like is how subtle this part here is. The upper part of the eyelash is colored in the color of the eyelash, but then this part here is line art only. And what's really cool is that this part here, in between, you actually do see the skin color. So it's tiny, but it's a nice detail. Now this eye is looking a little bit lonely. I'm gonna add another eye on the other side. Alright, well that is it for this episode of Style Man A, or rather Style Woman A. And the main point, of course, not to draw a super finished, amazing illustration, but mainly to just focus on one feature that I want to mimic and learn more about, and it was the eyes. I think the main things I'm going to take away from the Yuru Camp style of eye is the fact that, it's still got 1, 2, 3, 4 spikes for the eyelashes. You've also got the general curve up, but then really swooping straight down for that ultra droopy eyes look, just constantly looking a little bit laid back. And then for the pupils itself, you've got that slightly rounded diamond shape, which is kind of egg-like. And instead of having line art for the base of the eye, you just have the color of the skin meeting the whites of the eyes, and then these little eyelashes here at the base. Then for the fold of the eyes, instead of having just a couple here at the edges, you've actually got a whole long line going all the way down to the base of the eyelash for the fold of the eye, a simple dot for the pupil, a simple dot for the highlight, and I love this. The shape of the shading on the top of the eye, it does kind of look a lot like the Star Trek insignia, but moreover, it looks like a mountain, actually, when you think about it. One of the main features in Yuru Camp is the fact that they're just constantly going camping and in forests, but mostly, around Mount Fuji. And you can already see the design of Mount Fuji was built directly into a lot of the eyes of these characters. Strangely enough, though, Rin, who is one of the main characters in the show, doesn't get eye shading like this. Her shading goes straight across like this, so she looks constantly droopy all the time. But there you have it. That is all I have managed to absorb from this design today. Let us know in the comments. From looking at Yuru Camp today, did you discover anything that I didn't notice? Leave a like on the video, suggest other characters that you'd like to see in this series. Remember, of course, to subscribe to Doki Doki Drawing, and I'll see you in the next episode of Style Man A.